My phone rang with a number I recognized as Miss Lexi's. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her at first, begging me not to press charges and saying she'd tell me everything about the training Mrs. Wilson made them do if I'd just leave her out of the criminal case. I grabbed my phone's voice recorder app and started recording without telling her, letting her ramble about how sorry she was and how she never wanted to hurt anyone. She mentioned 2 other therapists, Sarah and Aaron, who were also using the foam protocol and said they'd all attended a workshop 6 months ago about behavior suppression techniques that Mrs. Wilson paid for them to attend. Miss Lexi kept talking about how the workshop leader demonstrated putting foam in a mannequin's mouth to show how it would muffle sounds, and Mrs. Wilson took notes the whole time, then bought the supplies the next week. I kept recording as she described how they practiced on stuffed animals first before moving to the kids, starting with small pieces and working up to larger chunks when the children learned to spit them out. She was crying harder now, saying she knew it was wrong, but Mrs. Wilson threatened to fire anyone who didn't meet the new, quiet compliance standards, and she couldn't afford to lose her job with 3 kids at home. The call lasted 47 minutes, and I got all of it recorded. The next morning, Gideon Armstrong showed up at my house at 8 a.m. sharp, wearing a suit and carrying a thick briefcase. We sat at my kitchen table for 3 hours going through every piece of evidence, while he took detailed notes and asked specific questions about dates and times. He reviewed the recording of Miss Lexi's confession, the medical reports from Dr. Hess, the photos of text messages, and all the parent statements Megan had helped me collect. Gideon made copies of everything on a portable scanner he brought and had me sign forms establishing chain of custody for each piece of evidence. Before he left, he made several phone calls from my driveway, and I heard him issuing preservation orders for all the center's computers, phones, and paper records, telling whoever was on the other end that nothing could be destroyed or removed from the premises. Later that afternoon, I got a call from the hospital saying the ethics committee was holding an emergency meeting about Elijah's case. They wanted me there to answer questions, so I drove over and found myself in a conference room with 12 doctors and administrators all looking at Dr. Hess's reports. The committee chair, an older woman with gray hair, said they were classifying this as a sentinel event, which meant it triggered a mandatory system-wide investigation and policy review for all their contracts with therapy providers. They asked me detailed questions about the timeline and took notes on everything while someone typed up an official report on a laptop. Meanwhile, Ivy had been busy with her investigation and called me that evening with huge news. She'd found purchase orders through a public records request showing the center bought industrial soundproofing foam in bulk 3 different times over the past 8 months, all signed by Mrs. Wilson herself with budget codes indicating it came from their therapeutic supplies fund. The supplier, a company called Soundblock Industries, had even included a warning on the invoice stating the product wasn't safe for oral contact and should be kept away from children, but Mrs. Wilson signed off on it anyway. Ivy emailed me copies of everything she found, including an email from the supplier to Mrs. Wilson, specifically stating the foam contained chemicals that could cause respiratory damage if ingested. That same night, I started calling every parent I could find from the Autism Support Group Facebook page, and within 2 hours, my phone was ringing non-stop with families sharing their own stories. Jennifer organized a meeting at her house the next morning where 12 families showed up, some driving over an hour to get there, and every single